Here we are again, folks. Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. Basic structures of authority start at home. Most of our homes today are in array. Worse than they were when I was younger, and they were in array when I was younger. We have the father. He's the head man. If he handles his position properly, like Father Knows Best did on television years ago. And then we have the mother. If she responds to the father, like that woman did to her husband in Fathers Know Best. And then if we have children that yield to their parents, like we saw back in that day. We saw what you called a united family. The children obeyed their parents in all things. And the Bible said this is well and pleasing unto the Lord. And that's Colossians 3:20. So when we come to this obedient thing in the family, it's a training process. It says, children, obey your parents in the Lord as those whom God has set over you. We have become in this world today in a place to where we don't want somebody over us. We would rather get our orders on the telephone, and then we can cuss out that person or complain about them or do anything that sent those orders on the telephone. And we don't have to realistically face things, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth, Ephesians 6:1-3. Evidently, what time that I had with my parents when I was young, I must have halfway obeyed something, because God has gave me some long life. The eye that mocketh at his father, and despises to obey his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pick it out, and the young eagles shall eat it. Proverbs 30:17. I'm studying a study book from in the 70s. I got saved in 1972, November 5th at 3 o'clock in the morning, drunk and disorderly, and wrecked my car, and God knocked on my heart and said, your number's up. I said, God, forgive me, I'm a sinner. I came then in under the orientation of God. And God started orienting me into being a father that was supposedly a good father. Oh yes, I was a father of 4 or 5 children when I got saved, and now I'm a father of 6 children. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be the king as supreme, or under governors as unto them that are sent by him, for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. 1 Peter 2:13-14. We're people that do not like to submit. We just don't like to submit. I say sometimes that I know people that were born feet first and then the kickative move. And they've never stopped kicking since the day they were born, and they're kicking their way through life, and they're going to go out the same way they came in. It said, let every soul be subject unto the higher power. For there is no power but of God, and the powers that be are ordained by God. Romans 13:1. God ordained a mother and father to be the ruler in the house. The father is cock-a-doodle-doo, the rooster. Sometimes he has to fluff his feathers up and make a statement. And the mother, the hen part of the deal, is supposed to not be a hen pecker. She doesn't peck at the rooster. And the rooster doesn't peck her. But they get along with each other. And that's the way it's supposed to be. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil, for he is a minister of God to thee of good. Romans 13:3 and 4. God gave authority to the parents to be over the children, to bring up a family like Father knows best. To find that family today in this world is very difficult. We live in a world of permissiveness where nothing seems, we don't seem to pay attention that God's still looking on the scene, that God still is on the scene, that God still wants us to follow Him. Wherefore you must needs be subject. God wants us to be subject to Him so that those that are under us can be subject to us. Not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. Romans 13:5. And he says for with a capital 4 and then FOR with a small 4. For this cause, pray ye, pay ye tribute also. For they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore all their dues. So we go outside of the home, outside of the father, outside of the mother, with what we learned inside with the mother and father. And somebody says, there's a $10 fee to cross this bridge. You have to pay it. Everybody has to pay it that crosses that bridge. So you can pay it with confusion, with griping, with disdain or whatever, or you can say, this is the price and this is it. If I'm going to cross this bridge, I've got to pay what it says. And that's just the way life is. At the end of the year, we gripe and complain and go to the tax people and say, hey, can you work this out to where it can be less? And they're supposed to use all their ingenuity that they've learned around some cycles and say, yeah, I can get it down by $1,000. Say, wow, will you do that? And then they give you a bill and you complain about their bill. They just saved you $1,000 and you complain about paying them $300. And we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you and are over you in the Lord, and admonish you to esteem them very highly in love for their work's sake. 1 Thessalonians 5:12 and 13. Are you in church? Do you go to a church? Are you saved? Have you asked Jesus to save you? Is He your ultimate authority? Do you have Sunday school teachers? Do you treat those Sunday school teachers, all of them? You say, hey, I went down through the classes before I got to where I am right now. I didn't like that one. Well, it wasn't meant for you to be in his class. You're not going to join up with everybody, but you can't say that you don't like them. You didn't particularly like the way you and he met, the way he was teaching. Fine. God sent you on down the line so you could get in one that you could understand, that you could get with, and you can respect all of them. All of them have a position. All of them are teachers in the church. You may have 15. We probably got 15, 20 or more teachers in our church. Would I like sitting under all of them? No, of course not. There would be a few that I really like sitting under. There would be a few I really wouldn't like to sit under. That doesn't mean that their teaching's bad. That means that they and I are on the same teaching level. but their teaching is just as good. I've seen some people that I didn't particularly like the way they teach, put 40, 50 in a class, and the class growing. What is the problem? The problem is not the teacher, it's me. He's doing good, or she's doing good, and I fail to like them. So, listen, we have national leaders, we have local officials, and we have citizens of the world, and we need to learn spiritually how to get along with all of these. What we're looking at today, right now, is 4 basic things in the structure of authority. One of the best things you could learn out of all of this to start with is if a man is your authority, and he's been appointed to be your authority and you are under him, and you agree to take that job, you do not have a right to complain. What you do is you do your best to do the best for him you can. More than likely, the better you do for him, the worse he's going to get to you. Because he thinks you're kind of chiding him by doing that. But if you just keep acting godly and keep acting right, that it will turn around one day, or God will move you to another place, or move that boss to Africa somewhere. So, I let the elders that rule well be contented, worthy of double honor, especially them who labor in the word and doctrine, and labor in worthy of his reward. 1 Timothy 5:17 and 18. The Bible said a laborer is worthy of his hire. I might be a bean picker. When I was a kid, I went bean picking. Wasn't very good at it. By the time I got that many beans in the bottom of my basket, somebody else was walking up with a full basket. I went strawberry picking. I found out I wasn't very good at that either. I just wasn't a very good picker. That's all it was to it. And let the elders which are among you, I exhort, feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre's sake, but of a ready mind, neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being examples in the flock. And that word is en, examples. You can do something as a thing by example. But if you want to be an example, you do the same thing all the time. You do the same thing all the time. You respect the people that are over you all the time. In our church, I have some people that are half my age, and not even half my age, a third of my age, and they're my elders in responsibility. They're my elders in telling me what to do. Say, hey, Pete, go there and do that. So, okay. Some would use a different terminology. How about going there and doing this and that? I say, okay. I'll accept it either way. If they are the authority, whether they're a third as old as I am or not, if they're the authority, they're the authority, and that's it. And you have to go by it. And hey, he said, and we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you, and are over you in the Lord, and admonish you to esteem them very highly in love for their works' sake. Every one of us are going to have something when we get to heaven called works. When the Bible says you're going to be known on earth, in heaven as you're known on earth, it doesn't talk about looks. I don't know what I'm going to look like. But if I look just like I'm looking right now, okay. That's the way God made me. But that's not how I'm going to be known in heaven, by what I look like. I'm going to be known in heaven by the works that I do. How many souls have I won to the Lord? How many people today did you take one of these out, a piece of information about God, and sit right down and speak. God gave me the opportunity today to take a 17-year-old boy to sit down, and what I did with him is I got him to look our websites up while I was sitting right beside him on his telephone, and then he had them on his phone. Now I said, you can go to church with us. You can hear what God has to say to you. And he's already in a church, but he's in a church that I don't know for sure it's dead. All I know is that there's been dirt being shoveled on it for years. It hasn't got covered up yet. But there are going to be a certain type of church that God is going to say, when he says, come up hither, he's going to say, not you, I spew you out of my mouth. You didn't do anything but formalism. You were a formal church. And you didn't even let me in. I stood at the door and knocked, and you would not let me in. You were too interested in your formalism. We have homes that are formal. They're so formal that children don't dare sneeze. And you know, this is what we've been looking at. We've been looking at the family circle. The basic family circle. Mother, father, children. What are we turning out today? Are we turning out good, working children? Children that can obey a boss. Children that have no problem. They don't get in a shell and do the opposite. Don't do anything at all. Oh, well, can take a command and say, yes, sir, and go to it. I think that the Israelite people over there in Israel have a good idea. We went over there in 73, and while we were visiting, I saw 13-year-old boys packing a rifle. I found out they have to serve in the service a spell at that age and learn commands and learn to do what an official says do. You do what I do, and that's what you do. Exactly. You put this piece on, you go to work in the morning. You go down there and open the shop, you keep it handy. You're part of the service now. And you're being trained, and you do what you're commanded to do by your commander. This is something that's going away today. The poor fellows in the service today that are getting the recruits today are having a terrible time with recruits that do not understand commands, that have never wanted to yield to a command and still don't. Servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as man pleases, but with singleness of heart, fearing God. Colossians 3:22. And whatsoever you do, do it heartily. Man, I love to do things heartily. All my life I've done things heartily when I went at it. I was the kid in the house that got the firewood up. And I went at it heartily. There's very few people out here today can claim one of the claims I can claim. That I literally cut with an axe and sawed with a handsaw and with a crosscut saw as much as 16 cords of wood for the winter. Then I went out behind the house and got boughs off from spruce trees, big long boughs with fine needles on them, and pulled them up to the house. And we'd take the car and go fill the trunk with sawdust and come back and bank the house with sawdust around the house and then put those boughs on there. And then when the first big snow came, it would snow on that, and it would pack, and it would freeze hard, and it would work as an insulator around the house for the winter. And it would be fairly easy to keep the house 35, 40 degrees, just about freezing. And 40 degrees, when I was young, 40 degrees was comfortable in our house compared to 0 outdoors. And so there was a way, but during that way there was a command my daddy gave, and I followed it. And I enjoyed following it. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and to the gentle, but also to the froward. You may have a master that's a froward rascal. He had a tough daddy. Whoo, his daddy said, get out of my way. Kid, get out of my way. I'm doing something. Can you see I'm doing something? Don't bother me right now. I've been that parent. I was that parent. That's an ugly parent. That's an ugly parent. I've been that parent. I know. And I have children with results of it. I see them. Let as many servants as are under your yoke, count their own masters worthy of all honor, that the name of God and his doctrine be not blasphemed. 1 Timothy 6. Are you a boss? Are you a foreman? You are a boss at home. You are the head of the house. You are a foreman in the house. You are to be an example in the house. These last 2 or 3 excerpts I've been talking about family. These are about family. And by the way, these excerpts were put on paper in the 70s, the early 70s. And we have strayed away from this today. We don't even know these Bible verses anymore in our home. Let as many servants as are under you, under the yoke, count their own master worthy. What does that mean? The Bible talks about servants in the Bible. They call them slaves. And many of them were bought slaves. And there came a day when the master said, you have done your tenure. You have been a very, very good slave. And he will say to the master, Master, I don't want to leave you. I will put my ear up against a piece of wood and let you take an awl and the hammer and drive a hole in my ear. And I will put a ring in my ear that says that I'm a free bondsman to you. I want to stay with you. I want to work for you. I want to live like I do. I enjoy it. I want what you have for me. And you've been a good master, and I want to be, this is what I want. And that's how we're supposed to be. And if we would raise our family like that, our children would want to be around us. Our children would want to know us. Our children would want to be where we need to be. I failed so much in my child raising. Let as many servants as are under the yoke count their own masters worthy of all honor, that the name of God and his doctrine be not blasphemed. He's saying it's a godly thing to be a good master. It's a godly thing to be a good father. It's a godly thing to be a good uncle or a good aunt. And they that have believing masters, let them not despise them, but rather do them service. 1 Timothy 6 and 2. Now he says in Timothy, for you and I, as parents and as regular men and women, these things teach and exhort. If any man teach otherwise, he is proud, knowing nothing. Whew. I see in young people today many things I saw in myself that stemmed from some mistakes that my father made. Was he a good father? He was as good as he could possibly be. He was raised with a extremely tough father. Extremely tough. It's very hard to break away from your genetics and your family and what your family's been like. There was a family that I knew that my father hailed from originally. And I found out that many of the characteristics of that family were in my father. And many of those characteristics and traits were brought down through me into my children. I thank the Lord for the good ones. And the majority of my children, the good ones, weigh out the bad. God has blessed me there. So here we are. My son, keep thy father's commandments. Forsake not the law of thy mother. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. Proverbs 6:20 and 22. Giving my mother due. She lived to be 96. She was not sick. She still had a pretty strong eye. The only pill she took in the morning was somebody talked her into taking a Claritin. And she thought she needed that Claritin every day. And so she did what she was requested to by some of the children. And she was an honorable woman. She was a happy woman. She loved the Lord and she loved people. I have in my repertoire, in my attic, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters my mother wrote. When my mother and father didn't have money for anything else, they bought stamps. They might not could put a jar of coffee on the table, but they would buy stamps. They mailed out. When at Christmas time, they would get as many as 50 Christmas cards. 2 people getting 50 Christmas cards. You know why? They were stewardess through the year. My daddy, he was a writer. Hey, when he sent a letter, it was 6 pages long on both sides and written in the corners. He could sit down and write a 10-page letter in just a little bit. He could write a book. He was a happy man. He was a happy man. I picture my daddy, and I always have, a man sitting under the tree, reading a Bible, communing with God. That was my daddy. And when he spoke about God. And when he spoke, he gave God credence. He was always faithful to the Lord God of heaven. I saw, when I was young, I saw faith that was not believable. I saw us get to a place where my daddy evidently was being tested for some way or another, and there wasn't any food in the house. And I'm not talking about just for a little bit. I'm talking for a pretty good season. And God sent a man over there with a carload of food and the car. He said, I'm giving you the food and the car. Go to work. And my daddy did. Listen, one day, a group of Christian students was given the following situation. A certain fellow met a girl whom he loved very much. They decided to get married and set the wedding date. And as the time approached, he began to have various doubts about this being God's will. How could he be certain that it was God's will? One of the first things he had to do is put God first. The key to everything that we do is called faith. We need to use practical faith so that we can get the direction. This is where the ability comes to interpret what God has us do in faith as from God. God is saying to us through many different attitudes and many different avenues. And I know we have many different reactions. But the directions of those that God gives us, we are responsible in these various areas of our life to follow what God would have us do. One of the most important things, young man, old man, middle-aged man, whatever man you are, when God puts a woman in your path, make sure that God put the woman there, and not the lust of the flesh, and not the lust of the eyes, nor the pride of life, that I could take this beautiful woman and walk down the street with her and everybody will say, look at that beautiful woman, and make you so mad that you could spit nails. She's my woman. Y'all quit looking at her. You married her so people would look at her. You married for the wrong reason. You got a good looking woman, but you didn't get yourself a good partner. You need to back up. If you've got that beautiful woman, and learn how to love her, not for her outside beauty, but for her inside beauty. Hey, the students quickly named 6 of the following 8 means which God uses to reveal his will to us. Not one guessed that the other 2. Their response was significant indication why so many youth today are drifting without clear direction and are continually making wrong decisions. 1975. Most of the stuff I study is from back when I first got saved. Most of the stuff I study, it still has the basis that it had back in the 70s, 74, 75. It's still true today. It's still, every single word of it is still true today. It's Scripture. A person may be able to read the Bible. But so many youth today are drifting without clear direction and are continually making wrong decisions. And back in the 70s, 75, we were reading the Bible to our children. And our children were reading the Bible. But we failed to instill in them salvation is first. Dear God, I am a sinner. Forgive me of my sin, come into my heart and save my soul. And he will give you the interpretation of his book, the Bible, the Bible. That's God's book. Every direction in it is for you and I. But we can only reap that which we have planted in. If we had, one of the first things I did when I got saved, I was challenged to read the Bible through the first year. The only way I could do it was on record, and I did. I put records on and I played the Bible through. That's what we had in that day. We have transferred into myriads of other ways to do the Bible now with it read openly. But not all of them lead to the same instilling that you got back years ago when you were first getting it. A person may be able to read the Bible but miss or not understand the principle that is being applied directly to his situation. For every situation mankind gets in, there is an answer in the Bible. If you go to the Bible When a man gets a wife, the Bible said he gets a good thing. If a man gets a wife and it's a bad thing, it's his fault because he didn't go by what the Bible said. The Bible said, do not be unequally yoked. Young man, you have no business going with a girl that's not saved. You need to take her to church. You need to speak to her about being saved. Then once you do that, you both can learn how to be chaste. What is that, Brother Peter? In this day, there's no such a thing. That means you do not touch each other in the way a married person would until you are married. You honor each other's bodies, and you honor each other. And you stay clear from the sin that would set you aside, so easily beset you. Hey, the wedding night is supposed to be the first night that you ever encounter that type of closeness. If that be the case, you will be together until the day you die. Guaranteed. Government. A person may fulfill the regulations of age and citizenship which government requires and still have doubt about the marriage. The government said you need to be a certain age. Used to talk about the age of accountability, the age of 18. 21 for a man, 18 for a woman. Ministers. A minister may give encouragement on the basis that each person is a fine Christian, but the doubts may still remain. Make sure. Make sure. Make sure. We've been inundated for a couple hundred years, or a couple decades here, in the last 40 years, we'll say, where boys and girls jump in bed with no idea at all about the consequences. With no idea at all that they're breaking all the regulations that bring you to a good and healthy home life. A couple years into the marriage, the boy says to the girl, "Hey, you ain't out there letting somebody throw you down like you let me, are you?" And she says to the man, "You ain't out there just jumping on every girl that comes along, are you, like you did on me? You sowed a seed before you got married that grew a plant that now is yielding doubt." And that's where you are. You have to dispel, you need to sit down with each other and talk about it. And say, look, we made our mistakes when we were going together. We broke some rules that would have been the thread that keeps us on the even keel every day, all the time. Would you forgive me for breaking those rules? And ask her, would you forgive me for breaking those rules? And say, let's agree together, we broke the rules. Now let's agree together, we're going to be chaste with each other. That means that I will not look at another woman, and you will not look at another man. Period. With lust. We will 100% trust each other from today forward. We will swear to it and agree to it. And put it in binding. A good hug and a good kiss and a good love and a little tear. And mean it. A person in trying to reassure himself may try to translate circumstances as God approved. God does not approve anything that is not of Him. A person's friends may give encouragement because they think that will make him happy, and they wouldn't want him to miss out on a marriage. That's the beginning of a bad marriage. That's the beginning of one marriage, and maybe 2 or 3 or 4. I got news for you. There's one girl out here for one man. God gave me the one I was supposed to have. I had her for 59 years. She was the one I was supposed to have. 56 years, excuse me. 56 years. No, I didn't. I had her for 59 years. I got a daughter 59. A person's praise must be based on discerning what God intends to do, not on twisting God's arm to do what He wants God to do. But let God be the ruler. Father, the word Father, essentially means finding God's will. Mother, this is the right partner. My son, keep my father's commandments. Forsake not the law of thy mother. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. Proverbs 6:20 through 22. Just think, 70, 80, 90, 2000. This piece of paper is about 38 years ago that it was studied. About 38 years ago. It's just as good today as it was then. It hasn't changed. Human authority in the hands of a skillful God. God was skillful enough to make Adam and Eve to fit like a hammer and a nail. You can take a nail and pound it with a lot of objects, but it's so much easier to pound with the design of a hammer. You can take a chisel and a hammer, a diamond chisel, and chip a diamond away and make it a beautiful looking piece of stone. But you have to hit that hammer just right on that chisel, just in the right place, or you destroy the diamond. Ladies, all of you ladies, when you're young girls, you're a diamond in the rough. Men, you're a diamond cutter. If you'll cut that diamond right, if you'll chisel right, if you'll chisel pleasantly, if you'll work at it, you'll bring the sparkle out in that woman. You'll bring a nice diamond, a beautiful, well put together diamond. And you and her will fit until you go to heaven. Each of us has a multitude of characteristics. We even have some deficiencies. You ain't going to get many men to agree that he has some deficiency that need to be perfected. God uses those in authority to this. Watch out for foolishness. It was bound in the heart of a child. You no longer are a child, so the rod of correction shall drive it far from him when you're a child. But do you know that never fails to be the truth? I'm a grown man now. But I have to be careful that I don't have to, God doesn't have to come use the rod of correction on me as a grown man. Because that foolishness that was bound in the heart of a child is still some of it bound in this old man. God assures us that the heart of one who is in authority is in his hand, and that he turns it in the same way he does as a mentoring. He mentors us. And he makes us like a meandering river coming down through life. And brings the foolishness out of us in some of the turns. Slows the water down. Coming to a place where the current is real heavy. And God says right here now, watch out for those rocks. Brother Charles Stanley's son, Andy Stanley, preaches a message, rocks just under the water. You're sailing down the river just fine, man. You're having a time. You're in your little kayak, and all of a sudden, bam, you hit a rock and it flips you upside down. Now your head's underwater. If you've practiced enough and you're skillful enough, you'll flip right back up. But you have to be skilled. This is life. You have to learn how to ride that kayak in a skillful way. And you have to learn how to go through life in a skillful way. And God will lead you. God assures us that the heart of one who is in authority is in his hand. Wow. If you have an authority over you, I don't care if he's an ugly cussing man. If he is the authority, that means he's the authority. And you're not to aggravate him. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it wheresoever he will. Proverbs 21:1. I just got done talking about that river we're in. We are that river. I am one of the rivers of God. I am to yield righteousness out of my river. I am to turn where the banks turn and not try to overflow the banks. I am to go by the rocks where I need to go by the rocks and through and over the dam. Life is topsy-turvy. It's sometimes upside down, sometimes right side up. What we need to do is learn when we're upside down how to flip over like we did in that little old boat we're strapped into. Hey, God's more concerned about our character, because like that of Jesus Christ, than he is about our instruments. About what we have and about that. He's interested in our character. He uses to accomplish this. Therefore, we push away to get out from under the reproof and the authority of our parents. God only has to rise up new tools to chip away the rough edges of our character to make us be that proper diamond that we're supposed to be. When we first get saved, we're a diamond in the rough. A diamond in the rough's not pretty. You or I could pick a diamond in the rough up and actually put it in a slingshot and shoot it. Not think much of it. But to a diamond cutter, when he sees it, whoa, he says, man, look at that. That right there has got a grain. I can cut that into a beautiful diamond. While working with the inner city gang, we would be constantly amazed of the sequence of events. Did you know many of the inner-city gangs have rituals and have ways that are not unlike some of the Bible ways in a sense, yet they're not proper, yet they bring about what needs to be brought about, that everybody is on the same page? Sometimes a teenager would say in disgust, I'm sick, and I'm tired of taking orders from my parents. I would inquire, what do you plan to do about it? He would reply, I'm going to go and join the service. They usually choose the Marines. I'll never forget Brother Ralph telling my mentor preacher. He said, Ralph, I'm going to prove to my mom and dad, son, I ain't going to sit on this authority. I'm going to go in the Marines. Only to find out that Marine is spelled like moron. You got more on you than your parents put on you, and real quick. When you went in the Marines. A girl would often use marriage as a way to escape the pressure of parents, only to have God begin to use her husband to carry on his work of character development. We never get out from under development. We never get out from under the chisel of the Holy Spirit to chisel off those things that are in our life that are ineffective and ineffective and sometimes morally wrong and many times wrong in just being wrong. Many times. My suggestion to you today, get in and get going. You get in the gospel. Are you in a home that you're unhappy with your parents? Go and straighten it out. Talk about it. Mother and father, talk to your children. If you don't open some communication and you allow them to use this junky thing right here on a daily basis, hour after hour, you can look toward burying your child very young. You can look to that child being sucked in by the devil. His suck hole has got bigger and more powerful than it was a few years ago. He now is drawing by the thousands. I talked in an excerpt a little bit ago about a new order out here of boys and girls in school that they can join, called A Pleasant Way of Suicide. Just end life. Life is boring, meaningless. What's on this thing right here is meaningless. They can hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt day and night and not find the answer. They can take a New Testament, and get started in Matthew, and in one day get answers they never would get in 50 years of punching this telephone in the devil's area. Do you think those children are going to go over and find church stations? No. You think they're going to go over and find an old message by Billy Graham? No. Do you think they're going to look for some Christian singing? No. They're going to be sucked in by the devil's hole. He's trying to fill hell up right now. We are at the door of Jesus Christ coming on the scene and saying, come up hither to all the Christians. That means all that are left behind are going to spend eternity in hell. And fire and damnation. And you and I as Christians are failing. We're failing on a daily basis. Try never to walk by somebody that you don't give them the gospel. You say, I don't have any of those things you've got, Brother Peter. Well, I tell you what. I think this very tract right here would be good if you had some of them. If you get in touch with faithlagrange.com, LaGrange, Georgia, and request a packet of these tracts, I'll pay for them. I'll make sure that that secretary lets me know, and I'll pay for them, and I'll send you a packet of them. And you can use them. You say, but Faith's in LaGrange, and I'm in South Carolina. I don't care where you are. You can punch up this website and go to church with us. You can punch up www.faithlagrange.com and watch a pastor, Brother Donald Yancey. Watch good singing. Listen to true Bible preaching. And not only that, there's a good school on the back that you can go to. Very, very reasonable. About near free. And then on the other bottom one there is where my website is. And you can learn by these from stuff that I've learned. And I'm passing on to another generation, or the generation that is my age. When you get my age, you have to lean forward to see how much time you've been on there. And I've been on here 57 minutes. This is going to be an hour-long message, and it's only supposed to have been 30 minutes. I guess I got carried away. Most people that know me say, you live carried away, Peter. You're always carried away. You're always going further than you headed to. So listen, I'll see you next time. And remember, it can only be a good day if it's a godly day. Get in your book. Find your way. Start looking at things, hunting for things that are truly God's will and spiritual in God's kingdom. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.